Well, good morning all, and thank you very much, Noel, for your kind words, 2 kind words of welcome. I don't know which is the worst subject or the best subject, the banks or Pat Kenny, but I have to come on after the Pat Kenny discussion and talk about the banks. So, an awful lot of things we could say about the banks. I'm going to basically concentrate my own observations into 3 areas. First, do they need more money and would they get it? Second, what to do about the mortgage arrears. And third, the question of new lending. Now, there are lots of other issues. Are we all right there? Don't want to be too loud or too including the tapes, Anglo, and the question of an inquiry, and I have some thoughts on that, but this is probably going to come up with other speakers and in the conversation afterwards. So the first question really is this business of do the banks need more money? Now, the story is that they got a lot of money, 64 billion worth, the last of which, of course, was given in March 2011 after the most recent exhaustive exercise to try to determine their losses. 2 questions then. 2 years have passed. Will they need more money? And the second question is about getting some of the money that's already come in. Would we get that back? Do they need more money? Nobody knows. The answer is that at this stage you can't really determine whether they need more money unless you do a very, very detailed, virtually loan by loan. One thing that's been learned over the last few years is that aggregate assumptions about banks and their likely loan losses is not actually very productive. You have to go in and dig very deep indeed, as happened in the last exercises. There are a lot of moving parts in this whole thing. You can't just say, well, house prices have fallen by 60%, and those scenarios said they might fall by 62%, so we're okay, no more money is needed. It's not as simple as that. And people close to it genuinely say they don't know. Let me step back a little bit and talk about the so-called retroactive capitalisation. That sounds a bit technical, but we all, I think, know what it is. In July 2012, the Taoiseach signed up at 4 a.m. in the morning to a communique which purported, in his view, to say that the Europeans would give us money without a government guarantee to replace some of the 64 billion, so that, in other words, we could reduce our state liability in respect of that amount. However, like most things that are signed at 4 o'clock in the morning, people had different interpretations of, in fact, what was said. And no sooner was the ink dry that the northern countries, let me call it Germany for shorthand, but there were others, said, hold on, we didn't agree to this at all, that's not what it says, it never talks about the past, it talks about the future. Our Taoiseach said he understood it to talk about the past. Anyway, the upshot of that is, after a fair amount of acrimony, the issue is, I think, in my view at least, fairly clear. We're not going to get this money. This is not going to happen. The chances of it are virtually zero. For good or bad, there's political reasons, there's issues to do with the logic. The Germans say, look, the losses of the banks happened on your watch, therefore you're responsible for them. You had a national regulator who didn't do his job, and so you pay for that. In the future, when we have a European regulator, and if the European regulator doesn't end up doing, a good job, then in a sense the responsibility for bailing out banks and recapitalising them as needed, if they fail, will become a European responsibility. But that's the future, that's not the past. And there's a certain logic to that. There are other reasons as well. But I think the retroactive capitalisation isn't going to happen. However, the possibility, I think, cannot be excluded that if, as a result of the current exercise, additional funds are needed from the banks, then there is a possibility, I don't know how high, we don't know for a while, because the details of this scheme for the future have not been sorted out, could come from Europe and might not necessarily involve a state guarantee. That at least is, that possibility is in the realm of feasibility, but the retroactive one, in my view, is not. So that's where we are there. Second question on the arrears. Highly contentious, you probably saw new data, strategic defaults going up and so on. Now, the question here is the central bank and the government, particularly the central bank, have been pushing the banks very hard to come to terms with this. They have the capital, remember. They were given all the capital which was supposed to absorb the losses, the prospective losses on the mortgages. So So now, for some time, the banks have been pushed to actually using this capital to make provisions, to make losses, and the losses will be financed by the capital. That was the whole idea. But they've been reluctant to do that. And as I say, in recent months, the central bank and the government have ratcheted up the pressure on the banks. So, and I think this is very good. Why is it good? It's not just a question of the banks cleaning up their act in terms of a balance sheet. They have the losses, so they should register them and draw down their capital. There are much more substantive reasons. First of all, the banks are spending an enormous amount of time and resources chasing people, phoning them day in, day out. Hundreds, if not thousands, of people in the banks are doing this. This is not what banks should be doing. Banks should be involved in trying to do new lending. So the idea is that if they come to terms with this issue, make deals, the various types of deals, we can talk about that, then these people can get on with doing their proper work as bankers in terms of new activities. Second, we want to sell these banks at some point, the government's share, to someone, whoever. And nobody is willing to buy these bank assets, if you like, or buy the shares in banks, unless they know exactly the true financial position of the banks. Right now they don't, because the banks have not registered their losses, therefore their balance sheet is quite murky. And the third reason is, of course, one that everyone in the country can realise, that a fresh start is needed for many people. And if part of the debt can be warehoused, put into a certain place, then at least they will know where they stand for the next few years, and they can make financial plans, they can invest, they can try and borrow from new things from the banks and so on. So for all of these broader reasons, it's really very important that the banks come to grips with this. Now, the flip side of this is, it's not a question going to be simply we give a good deal to everybody. Foreclosures are quite likely and probably desirable, especially in the buy-to-let market. There's really no reason why buy-to-let investors who are not in a position to, for many reasons, to service the mortgages on all of their investments and their properties should not be required to surrender these properties at some point in banks. This will, of course, have the effect, gradually, of reducing the price of such properties on the market, because presumably the banks will, at some point, gradually sell them. Now, people say, oh, well, that's terrible, the property market could suddenly collapse. I don't think it's terrible. I don't think it will collapse. I think there will be some downward pressure. That's a good thing. And remember, for all that, we worry about property prices going down a bit more, especially in that market. But after all, for everyone, for people who want to buy, our children, our grandchildren, our nieces and nephews, actually having lower prices is a good thing. And so we always have to think about that. And I believe that in society's interest to find a better equilibrium in that particular part of the property market, and I think foreclosures and repossessions will help. That's not to say that this should happen in many cases with family homes, unless if you're talking about people who are living in very large family homes that clearly is not supportable. You can't be, the taxpayer, because that's what it comes down to, the taxpayer. We own the banks subsidising people who live in Aylesbury Road in Dublin, a $10 million, dollar, my apologies, €10 million house, to portray as far as a good bit of my time, and have the rest of the taxpayers supporting that. No downsizing would be needed. And strategic default. Yes, it is, of course, an issue. Now, I don't think you can eliminate strategic default. There's going to be some of this taking place. You try to minimise it. It's impossible to remove this completely. The banks should be pretty tough on this. They should be ruthless on it. I think they can be. They now have the legal powers to do it. And I think they have the full support of the central bank and the government. That's the deal. You do something about the loans, fix them up for people who are doing their best, and work out arrangements with them, absorb the losses. And you must do that. But at the same time, you must move aggressively with people who are potential or actual strategic defaulters. And I think that package makes sense, personally. Third question, new lending. Okay. People say you can't get a loan from the banks, these days. They gave out loans willy-nilly years ago, but now it's impossible. This is a very tricky issue. Of course, the banks have become more conservative. Well, that's a good thing. Have they become too conservative? Probably. We don't know for sure. But there is a pendulum swinging element that always happens. And of course, the government, can't force them to lend. It's not right that a government would be taking decisions, bank, you must lend to A, B and C and so on. So the government has, not so much the central bank actually, but the government has stepped in a little bit in that area, but it has to be very careful. The government is not in a good outfit to be telling banks who to lend to and what to lend to and how much. But they can put a certain amount of pressure, and they have. Whether the banks say they have been lending, but then there are problems about data and, whether we're talking about loan approvals or loan drawdowns, and, much argument goes on as to what the figures prove. I would say another controversy is whether the fact if the banks are not lending, let's suppose they're not lending as much as we would like, is that because they're being over stringent in terms of their loan conditions and the qualifications for loans, or is it because the demand for projects, the projects out there that people would like to borrow for, are not sufficiently sound? Different studies have been done on this. The IMF claimed in one study that they thought that the banks had not actually tightened their lending standards as far as they could figure out. It was more to do with the fact that the demand, if you like, for loans for good projects was weak. Central Bank did another study saying that the loan standards in Ireland at the moment applied by banks, especially for small businesses, were among the highest, I think, if not the highest among the euro area things. I don't know, both could be true. It's a difficult issue. But I think we have to be, in my view really, I think that what will really make bank lending take off significantly is not so much the question of them loosening a little bit here or there their loan standards. It's really to do with whether the economy takes off, because in a situation of uncertainty which we have now, and there are lots of reasons for that, some good, some not so good, people are reluctant, to make firm plans for the future. They're not quite sure what will happen in the next budget, taxation, God knows what. There was the worry about the euro, though maybe that's really reduced a bit. But I think that really the problem of the absence of bank lending is more to do with the macro environment, and that has got to take off and improve before we would see a major resurgence in lending. My last observation is just more a small observation. I think the banks can do a lot more as institutions to publicly engage in debate on what they're doing, what the constraints they face, how they view some of the issues I've been referring to. They tend to have been retreated, at least in my observations, maybe I'm wrong, somewhat into a little bit of a more defensive cocoon and not engaging as much as I think they should. For example, it would have been nice, I think, on a session banking system in such an important, gathering as this, where people from all senior levels of politicians and other organisations represented this week and actively engaging in debate. I'm a bit surprised that, the banks aren't here this morning. I think that's a pity. I believe they were invited, but for some reason they maybe didn't want to attend. Maybe they feel that people are going to throw, tomatoes and rotten eggs at them, which, mind you, has happened, as we know. But I think that's unfortunate. I mean, the people who would be here representing the banks are not the gentlemen whom we've learned to love and on the tapes. These are people who are trying to fix the thing up. They have nothing to do with the problems of the past. And I think it would be helpful if they engage more actively in public debate. And I think we can have a robust discussion without it becoming too unpleasant. Anyway, those are some thoughts. I'm happy to talk about other things, but let me stop there.